this is Callie Ann Hamilton from pixelinks.com. I'm going to show you a tutorial today on how to do colored line art with your digi-stamps. It's kind of a cool technique, and you might wonder, why would you want to color your line art? It's a technique that they use a lot in animated movies. You see here is a picture of Winnie the Pooh. You can see that his line art is yellowish, a little bit darker than the color of his fur, and that makes it his image look softer and more colorful. You can see it also in shows like My Little Pony, the Disney princesses. You can see they've got the kind of darker flesh-colored in the line art on their skin, and darker red in Ariel's hair, things like that. So kind of cool. I'm going to be using Photoshop Elements, which is kind of a simpler version of Photoshop. I highly recommend it. I'm going to start by opening the file we want to work with, just wherever it is you happen to save yours. I'm going to work with this pumpkin digi-stamp. It's in .png format, and you can see that in Photoshop that opens up with a checkered background. It's a little annoying to work with, so I like to add a new layer. Put it in the background and fill it with white. That way we can see the line art a little bit better. Now what you want to do for colored line art is go over to the layers panel and click this checker box. That's going to lock the line art layer, so we can only change the line art. So let's grab a color. This is a pumpkin. We're going to go for orange, kind of a darker orange than you might normally go for. And my brush is massive, but we'll start with that for now. And you can see just the liner is changing. If you unlock the layer and you scribble on it, you can see what happens. So I'm going to hit Control Z, that's Command Z on a Mac. I'm going to relock that layer and keep going. Now obviously you're not going to want things like the leaves and the stem to be green, or sorry, to be orange, so we're going to grab another color. Go for dark green. You can see that you can switch between foreground and background color. That's really useful when you're working with more than one color. We're going to zoom in really close. To zoom in, you use the magnifying glass. You can also use Control plus and Control minus to zoom in and out. Keyboard shortcuts are your friend. Another cool one is the bracket keys will change the size of your brush. The left bracket makes it smaller, the right bracket makes it bigger. So you can see, we'll just go at it. Now if you happen to color a little farther than you mean to, say we get down here, so our brush is too big or whatever, you can always Control Z to undo, or you can just hit the X key. That will switch your foreground color and your background color, so that'll grab that other color you are working with. This is super handy if you're working with two colors and you kind of want to keep your speed up. I like to go pretty small to get these little bits here. And where exactly you have one color begin and another end is completely based on personal preference. The more careful you are, the better it's going to ultimately look. And just kind of keep going at it. It's a really neat technique. It's also cool to use if you want more of a minimalistic style. For example, if you want a little splash of color, but you don't necessarily want to fill in the picture, you can just color the line art to kind of suggest the color. This is a really good technique for logo designs and things like that, where you're not able to use a whole bunch of colors, and you don't want just big splotches of color. You can also, if you want a digi-stamp to look more faded, you can also just use lighter colors, or you can reduce the opacity over here in the layers palette of the line art, make it fade a little bit. Also cool for creating watermarks, for creating logos, things like that. So depending on the complexity of your line art, it can get it can be a little time consuming, sometimes a little tedious. Fortunately, this is a pretty simple image. You can see as we add color, it kind of brings this image to life, and it looks particularly neat once you fill it in with your colors. You're going to want to work in a slightly different, or a slightly darker color, excuse me, than you would fill it with. When we go back to these images, you can see that the red that they used for Ariel's hair is darker. Winnie the Pooh's fur is a little bit darker around the edges. That makes it stand out. So we're just about done. You can go in and be as nitpicky as you would like with where the lines end and begin and all that, but that's basically how you do it. Let me show you the effect when it's filled. I've already got this prepared. So if we filled it in, it would end up looking something like this. You can see it's very colorful. It's kind of got a cutesy look about it. Let me show you what it looks like when you just leave it on black. So this looks more like something you would see in a coloring page, and this is great, it works, but the color fill, the colored lines look a little more dynamic, a little cuter. It's a really easy way to add more color and depth to your image. So yeah, that's it. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and let me know if you have any questions.